This conference will now be recorded.
Thank you. I would like to call to order the July 21st meeting of the Monmouth City Council. And we'll start with our roll call, please. Phyllis.
Councillor Belts?
Here.
Councillor Carey?
Here.
Councillor Lopez?
Here.
Councillor Sharmer?
Here.
Councillor Schinkel?
Here.
Councillor Silbernagel?
Here.
Mayor Kuntz?
I am here as well. And if you mute yourselves so you can lead, you can do the flag salute quietly, but John Kerry, if you can unmute and lead us in the flag salute this evening, I would appreciate that.
We pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Once again, this evening, we will take public comment. Comments from the community are entertained during the time designated. And in person, we ask that people complete a speaker's card and present that to us. I have some of those here. If anyone is online and would like to comment, please go into the chat function, which is the little bubble on the upper right of the screen. And please send a message to Phyllis Bowman only. Phyllis, our city recorder, will then and go ahead and let her know your name and a little bit about what you would like to speak about. We will then call on you during the time allotted for public comments. Comments are limited to 3 minutes, but the council welcomes additional information in writing. Typically that comment is taken under advisement to allow time for a response and for council or staff to review the issue. But council or staff may ask clarifying questions, and then also we'll note if people would like follow-up and how they would like that. So would like to thank everyone for attendance this evening at this meeting of the Monmouth City Council. And we will start off with the consent calendar. We had a couple of items this time. One is back in January, we had a budget kickoff meeting. And the minutes of that were presented to us for review, along with the minutes of the council meeting of July 7th. Unless there are any additions or corrections, a motion to accept the consent calendar as presented would be appreciated.
I move acceptance of the consent calendar.
Thank you, Councillor Silbernagel. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Councillor Lopez. Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you very much. And any opposed? All right. We do have a public presentation this evening. And again, topics of extreme interest right now, Polk County and where we stand in relation to the COVID outbreak. And how some of that is being handled actually by people right here in our community, and a really unique partnership, I think, in the state. And would you like to introduce our participants, Chad Olson?
Sure, thank you, Mayor. So a few weeks ago, there's the COVID-19 community response team meeting that includes the City of Monmouth, Independence, the Central School District, Western, and the Polk Fire District. And as part of that, we knew that Western was working with Polk County in terms of its contact tracing program to implement something. And Megan and Emily are here with us, and they did such a great job with that presentation and talking about the intricacies of tracing. that I said, you guys need to come and do this for the Monmouth City Council. And so with that, I'll just turn it over to them, and wanted to just make sure that you do have, did the city recorder share so that you can make your presentation, your slide presentation?
I haven't yet because I don't know which one will be doing it.
Megan
Megan?
will.
Okay, thanks.
So Dr. Megan Patton-Lopez and Dr. Emily Valla-Haynes from Western Oregon University, and a little bit more of an introduction, and we'll get started. Thanks.
Well, Megan, are you about to?
Yeah,
show
yeah.
the
If I can share my, sorry, if I can share my screen.
slide? Okay.
Sorry for the delay.
This is a new platform for us.
Okay.
We're great on Zoom. Well, I'll just start by introducing myself. My name is Emily Valla-Haynes, and I'm an associate professor at Western Oregon in the community health program. My background is in public health, and I'm typically the data statistical person. So I teach all the math classes that people love a ton. And Megan, I'll let you introduce yourself. And we also have a student of ours here as well, so we'll let Laura introduce herself too.
Yeah, thank you. Hello, yes, I'm Megan Patton-Lopez, and I'm an assistant professor at Western Oregon University in community health as well. I received my doctorate in public health at Oregon State University, so I like to say I'm a native Oregonian since 2003, but I'm really excited to be able to stay in this area and to work in Polk County. And yeah, we do have a student, an almost graduate, going to be alum. Miss Laura Moran is here as well, and she's going to be helping us out with the presentation and talking a little bit about her experiences with contact tracing. And I just want to ask, is there a trick to sharing my screen that, other than clicking on the little icon, I'm wondering why I'm not able to share.
So I made you presenter, so you should be able to share your screen. There's a bubble at the bottom that says screen, and that's how you share your screen.
Yeah, I said I need to open my system preferences to my computer.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Sorry
Well,
about that.
we can just go. We can wing it.
Yeah. Oh, I'm wondering too, if I put can I put a file into the chat, and would that open up for everyone, and then someone else could open the slides? Let's see. I think the
I
slides,
don't know.
I think the slides will help. Let me see if this, 1 second, if I can.
Laura, do you want to talk about where you went to high school?
Well, I went to high school there in Central, so I've been living in Oregon since 2015 when we moved from California. And then I started in Western Oregon, and I was there for 3 years, so I'm finishing a bit earlier. But this is my last term in Western, and I'm doing community health, so I'm getting my bachelor's in community health with a minor in human biology. And I've had both of these professors before.
And I'm actually from Yamhill County originally, so we're all, and I live in Independence, so we're all mostly local. So do we want to just go forward, Megan, and
I think so. I
on
apologize.
the presentation separately?
Yeah.
Okay.
Difficulty.
Yeah, so I'm just going to start by just talking about the project, which we're calling the Community Health in Polk County COVID-19 project, because we are doing a lot more than contact tracing, as you'll see. So we have 3 main aims, and they're all based off of our initial conversation with Polk County Public Health that had reached out, and really we're community health, so we were already kind of working with them quite a bit anyway. And they really needed help with contact tracing. So as you may know, every county needs 15 contact tracers per 90,000 people. So that's about, so Polk County needs 15 contact tracers. And so we have students contact tracing, and I'm going to have Laura talk a little bit more about what that entails. And then in addition to contact tracing, there's obviously quite a bit of other things that are involved with really preventing COVID in the community. And we decided to develop a health education, health communication campaign working with vulnerable populations in Polk County. and Megan will talk a little bit more about that. And then finally, what they really requested was some real-time data to support contact tracing as well as any other case prevention efforts. So I hear the word data and I get really excited, so I hopped onto that. And we're really just monitoring cases in the county as well as the zip codes, and making different visualizations with those that we're about to start sending out on about a weekly basis to anybody who's interested. And our team, as Laura mentioned, so our team is full of 8 interns, which are already in their very final term of school. And so they're essentially bachelor students. And we also have 2 students who recently graduated. And yeah, we got a really cute picture for you if you ever pull up our slides. But yeah, they're just a really, really fantastic group of students. We have multiple people who are bilingual, as is Laura, and just really kind of the top echelons of the classes that we've had. And it's been just a delight to work with them all summer. So I'll have Megan, or actually Laura, I'll hand it over to you to talk a little bit more about what the contact tracing has entailed.
So I don't know how aware of, like, you know what contact tracing is, but like in a basic description, it's contacting a person under monitoring, also known as a PUM, and asking them about their symptoms, if they've had a fever, and any other information they would like to give us so that we may report it to a supervisor if it is something serious that we need to report. If not, we just log it and then they check that. But contact tracing is more than that. Sometimes it does require you to help them with resources, as I previously had to. They call me and they're like, oh, I need help with this, or I need help with the rent. And we've had some information from the Polk County that they have resources about that. So other than gathering symptoms, like for our purpose, we also they're like a support system in a way, and helping them get information that they need, because a lot of them are worried about like all the uncertainty that's happening right now. Their life is basically changing in one day to another, where they're like, you need to be quarantined, you should try to stay in for benefit of others and for your benefit. And that's something that none of us would expect, like one day to another, having our daily task and then just taking them away from basically from them. And some of them do have to go out to work. They don't have the option of working remotely or staying at home and working. So we're basically the ones who help them with anything that's happening and any other information we need, and to gather the information we need to help slow down the spread of the virus with the people that are participating. Most of them have been, the ones I've contacted at least, have been really helpful. They're not like mad that we're contacting them every day, and they're really willing to help. And some of them even, I had recently someone like mentioned, they're like, oh, I don't want to go back to work yet, and they're telling me I need to go back to work. Like, can I get a work note so that I don't go? Because like I still worry that I might get someone sick. So we know that the community is actually trying to help slow down the spread, which is very important.
Yeah, so we've been, as Emily said, we've been doing this since last Friday, so almost, no, the 10th, almost 2 weeks now, a week and a half. And I think it's been a really good experience, the partnership with Polk County and the communicable disease team. I'm really excited that we're able to provide this support, because we know that, you know, there's other things happening in addition to COVID-19 right now, so we can help free up their time with that. And so another piece of this that that we are working on is, in addition to working and supporting Polk County with contact tracing, we applied and were awarded funding from the Oregon Health Authority to do community outreach and engagement around COVID-19. And in that application, they asked for, they had specific groups that they were wanting to make sure that were being focused on, in order to make sure that everyone in Oregon has the knowledge about what is COVID-19 and how to prevent it, and make sure, so trying to reach, sorry, I just had a private mess. So they have, in addition to the general public, which hopefully a lot of people are getting information, they wanted to make sure some other groups that traditionally may not receive information in the same way that most people in our communities do. And so we identified, among those populations, we identified older adults, low-income households, especially families with children that are participating in K through 12 public school system, the Latinx community, and then also we also are going to focus on WU students. And so in addition to providing contact tracing, the students, the interns, and our coordinators, and Dr. Vala Haynes and I are developing campaigns that are very targeted for each of these groups to meet the needs that they might have around knowledge, attitudes, beliefs around COVID-19, what is, around contact tracing, around the use of masks. And we are working in partnership with many community-based organizations that are already serving these communities. And so we want to be there as an extra support, since our students are trained on program planning and how to, to develop materials like this. So we thought this would be another service that we could provide. And with the funding from the Oregon Health Authority, we can purchase materials that are going to be needed for those outreach campaigns. And just to give you an example of what something might look like, one current idea that we're thinking of is around the masks and making sure that that different community groups have masks, cloth masks. And so it could be that we are doing working with the community organization to develop educational materials, but also providing a mask. And so kind of that reinforcing, this is why the mask is important. Here's a mask for you to have. We've also identified, trying to identify resources that we could purchase relating to, one idea is a bingo. There's a loteria in Spanish, is bingo. And so there is material already developed that we could have printed. And it's a family could play and learn both English and Spanish, the words around that are related to COVID-19. And it's a way, again, to reinforce the messages about like washing your hands. And I think they have wearing a mask. Those are all different little pieces of the game that they could play. So that's just kind of an example of those outreach and communication campaigns. For the partners, we are working closely with the Central School District. So Emily is a member of a couple of their work groups on helping the Central School District on being prepared for their plans. We're also partnering with Dallas Retirement Village, farm worker housing, and then also the Mano a Mano in Polk County. So let me see here. I'm going to get Phyllis now. I think, Phyllis, do I just move this to you? Perhaps we might have the PowerPoint presentation, at least to show you.
I'm trying to get the PowerPoint presentation up, just a sec.
No problem. If nothing else, we can show you our team picture.
We were really excited about that this morning. Everybody spent 30 seconds like doing their hair for our Zoom photo.
Okay.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, you're on mute.
There we go.
All right. I was going to be thinking of your question.
Yeah, so hopefully you'll start seeing, as we get materials going out, you'll start to see that logo there at the top, the Western Oregon University Community Health, along with the Polk County and Oregon Health Authority logos. So those and our partners that we work with, those will be going out there. But I don't know, perhaps just if you wouldn't mind going to the third slide, Phyllis, there's the picture of our team, and you all can, so there's our team.
We exist.
So two of our project coordinators are recent WU graduates, and so we're really excited that they're working with us. And then all the others will be soon to be graduates. So we'll be having a new group of interns coming in the fall to help support this work as well. Yeah.
And the coordinators stay, so they are constants, which is a massive help to us. They're really fantastic, all of them. So,
If you all, if you have questions for us,
We are
I
more
did
than happy to answer anything.
You're welcome to share those.
Thank you so much. And I have one question. And do we have bilingual members of the team? How many, if so?
Well, you just heard from one, Laura. Megan and I both also actually have a background working in Latin America and her working here, but with the Latinx community as well as Latin America. And we have one of our coordinators is bilingual, and we have another contact tracer who's also bilingual in Spanish.
Wonderful, thank you. Other questions, counselors? And John, you're kind of tiny on the giant screen I'm looking at, but I think John had his hand up. Counselor Carey.
I do. We hear a lot about, and by the way, thank you for your work, and thank you for your representation of Western Oregon. It's awesome on both the faculty and the undergrad level. That's very nice. The question that I have is we hear a lot about the slow return of results, and how does that negate the effectiveness of this in a substantial way? And then secondly, do you have any difficulty getting people to participate? You hear stories about people not answering the phone because they don't want to be identified, because then they would not be able to go to work, and they must work. Those are things that seems to be challenges. The system you have set is good. The human element might make it more difficult. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Well, I'll take the first question. So there was the article, I think it came out in the Oregonian either today or yesterday, that said that a lot of people are taking 2 weeks to get their results back, and that certainly harms the value of contact tracing, because the whole point of it obviously is you get tested, we ask you who you've been in contact with in the last couple of days, and we ask those people to then self-quarantine. And if you've been out gallivanting for 2 weeks, that doesn't really help us very much. Where it is actually more detrimental would be in communities that have a really high prevalence. They have just a huge rate of COVID infections, which fortunately for Polk County is not actually us right now. We've been doing really, really well. And that's been, we had, I think, 7 cases the other day and 8 at one point last week, but relative to the rest of Oregon, that is really good. So if we were Multnomah County, if we were Marion County, which it's difficult to decouple from that, but for example, if we were Florida right now, 2 weeks to get tests back, like that's not contact tracing, and that method isn't going to really be that effective. But I would argue that for us, obviously we would want those tests to come back a lot faster. But in a county that's been doing so well, and hopefully will continue to do well, we can still, the service is still there, and it still, I think, is working. I think it's also really important to acknowledge that there's a lot of test development happening right now, and I know that there's just the preliminary studies of actually home testing and trying to get people to really get rapid results immediately in their home. And I think that there's going to be a lot of really exciting developments to come out with that over the next couple of months. Megan or Laura, do you want to take the other one? Or if that made sense to you? Thanks.
Yeah, what do you think, Laura, with the human behavior component of this, and the willingness of, what has your impression been on the phone calls around people's willingness to stay home and self-quarantine?
I think they've actually been very willing to help. Like, even when we've gathered ourselves during our team meetings, one of the interns as well has said that like she's able to have talk to them for a while. And then the person in my team, she's also mentioned that, oh, like I had a 20-minute conversation the other day. Like, So I think they're very willing to help out. And like I mentioned when I was talking about it, I did have someone also say like, oh, I don't want to go back to work yet because I'm worried about infecting others if I do come out positive, even though they were under like quarantine, like they worried about it for themselves, even though like their work was telling them, oh, you need to come back already. But they're like, no, I don't think it's time yet because the information I got or the information I read is like 10 to 14 days or 6 days. Like they were giving me all these numbers. So I think the people I've contacted at least are willing to help a lot. So I think that's something very good. And I don't know if like other people, sometimes there's gonna be like one or two always that are gonna be like, oh, I need to go back to work. But that's why we try to give them the resources as well so that they don't fall behind on rent. They don't like they're not without food, which is very important. And the initial contacts that we haven't done that yet, but I know we might start very soon. That's when they tell them, oh, do you have someone to gather food for you? Are you worried about rent? Can you get paid time off and all of that? So I think that helps a lot, gathering that information and then moving forward from there. But as far as like I've contacted, they're very willing to help.
Great. Yeah, we will start on Thursday, where during the contact tracing, the first time, once a case has been tested positive, they give the health department all of the names of people they know that they might have been in contact with during the time that they might have been infecting others. And then what we will do is we will receive those names, and then our team will reach out for the very first time and let them know that we've received your information, you may have been exposed, and then there's like a 20 to 30-minute conversation about these are the things that we would like for you to do in order to reduce the spread. Can you stay home for 14 days and all of that? So that's something that we will start doing this week. And then after that, we just follow up for 14 days or until, if they live in the household, then with the person that's infected, then they have to wait until that person that has COVID-19 has 3 days of no symptoms, and then the 14 days start. So that's one of the areas that can be a concern, is that some people could be self-quarantining for a month or more, depending on their situation. So.
Thanks. Other questions, Councillor Lopez, and then Councillor Belts.
Yes, thank you, and thank you all very much for taking the time to be here with us tonight. It's wonderful to be able to get firsthand information about how this is being handled locally. Or is there any expediting of tests if somebody does have a known exposure? So you've identified someone that's tested positive. You go through the contact tracing procedure. You find someone that's hits all the all the benchmarks, right? They've spent more than 15 minutes in close contact, et cetera, et cetera. Is there any way to close the loop and get a quicker test than the 7 days that the public's experiencing?
What usually happens, at least from our end, is that if a contact, one of our contacts that we're working with, if they develop symptoms, we then we let the nurse at the public health nurse know, and then we then ask them to contact their primary care provider. And if they don't have a primary care provider, then connect them to resources in the community. I'm not sure, and I don't know if Laura or Emily, if you have information. I don't know that it really depends. I think the length of time, from my understanding of how long it takes, really depends on where you go to get your test. Mm-hmm. And so there's not like there's not one site where we can send everybody who's already under monitoring to a specific place. It's whoever they normally would see. And then that kind of turnaround time depends on that entity. Emily, do you have more to add?
I would say, unfortunately, it's not an isolated problem. It's a national problem. And it's definitely been one of the many obstacles that, as a country and with a fairly fragmented health system, we really haven't been able to overcome. And yeah, and I wish that we could figure out how to fix that chain, and at some point it becomes beyond the scope of what we can do. When the Oregon Health Authority does the training initially, they always say as soon as we call someone and identify them as a PUM, so as they've had contact, they've had those 15 minutes of contact, usually the first question is, who was it? One of the second questions is, can I get tested now? And what we are trained to do is say, like, no, we don't have a special ability to send you out there. And so when we first started this, Polk County told us that the average number of contacts per positive case is 10 to 19. So it'd be a lot of people sending off to expedite, which of course we wish we could do. Once they actually do show symptoms, then it's certainly more of a priority to get them tested. But yeah, unfortunately, it still has come down to what health insurance do you have and who are your primary care providers.
Gotcha. Thank you.
And Roxanne?
Sorry. So I wondered if you talk with somebody or someone's tested positive and you ask, well, where have you been? Who have you? I mean, what if they say, well, I went to the casino, or I rode the bus, or I went to the grocery store? Do you contact those businesses and say, so just curious, how does that work?
Well, the definition of a contact is within 6 feet for at least 15 minutes. So typically, we would hope that everybody can remember who they were in contact with for 15 minutes or more within 6 feet. Certainly, there could be risk in other environments, but that's just you are or you aren't based off of that, those two questions.
And I think too, what they're doing when the case gets identified, they have a positive and they're being interviewed. Like, say, for example, if they were to say, well, I went to the hair salon. Now there is that's one of the reasons why there's that mandate for hair salons to keep track of everyone that comes in. So they could go back and ask the hair salon, well, we have someone that says they were visiting your establishment on this day. Who else was in the room at that time? So they have that record. So that's one of the reasons why you see so much more processes and steps in order to access these services, but also why there is that requirement on keeping the number of people in a building inside at any one time to a minimum. In case something like this happens, then we're going to reduce the spread of the disease of COVID-19 if someone does test positive, because it would be hard to track them otherwise.
Other questions? Anything else? Well, thank you both very much. I thought Dr. Sharmer would put in a plug for public health programs and Oregon State University for us at this time.
Well, I will, and I don't envy you in the work you're doing. I've done plenty of it myself. And I will tell you that it's when you're talking about knowledge and attitudes and behaviors with an organism like this with so many unknowns, it's that human behavior that is the hardest to deal with. And I've had so many people contact me and say things like, gosh, I was at a dinner party 10 days ago. There were only 10 of us there, but now my friend's husband is really sick. What should I do? And I've typed, and that's how the germs win so many times that if I type in an A, the entire phrase comes up in my word suggestion bar. So I really hand it to you. This is not an easy job. You guys are really doing a Herculean task here, and I know how hard it is, and I really appreciate everything you're doing.
Well, thank you. We appreciate that too, and I'm going to use that now.
And go Beavers.
Professor Sharmer gives you permission. Retired Professor Sharmer gives you permission.
I'm actually an emeritus professor.
Oh, thank you.
Of public health.
Oh, awesome. Great.
I did share our slides with Phyllis, and so if in the minutes, if you want to include those, we have our contact information on there. So if there's any questions or if anything comes up, feel free to reach out to Emily or myself, and we'll find answers or connect you with other resources if we can. Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you, and thank you, Laura. We are proud of our Panthers as well as our Wolves. So thank you very much for representing and for joining us. And thanks for sharing those slides. We will get those out. Appreciate it. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So next on the agenda is the mayor's report, and I have quite a few things to report. So I will kind of go through them. First of all, just to let you all know, I really had the honor week before last of having a very appropriately masked honor of assisting the ribbon cutting of the gate. So if you are familiar with that, about 15 years ago, folks had an idea of building a youth center on the grounds of First Baptist Church in Independence across from the high school. And we were able to finally open that for use by middle schoolers and high schoolers. That will be open right now on Tuesdays and Thursday afternoons. It was an amazing lesson in faith and perseverance and support from this community. So I really congratulate the Gate on their opening. And if you have an opportunity to go, you will see an amazing space for youth in our community and some great new community facilities as well. I have gotten, and perhaps some of you have also, some concerns expressed about 4th of July. It seems that maybe perhaps with less public displays of the celebration and the opportunity to enjoy fireworks, that we had a lot more private shows in our community and in talking to other mayors in lots of communities as well. And I'm not going to give all the details, but just out of curiosity, I asked our chief of police, Daryl Talon, to review the police log on the nights of July 3rd and July 4th. And so between 5 p.m. on the 3rd and 2 a.m. the morning of the 4th, this isn't even the 4th, the Monmouth Police Department responded to many calls. And there were, first of all, if you call 911 about fireworks, they won't even dispatch unless it causes a fire and they have to dispatch the fire department, or unless there is some other additional threatening circumstance. So if folks called 911, we're not even going to hear about that. But if folks call our non-emergency line, they did have about 7 different fireworks complaints during that time. However, when they go to investigate those, they get called away for other things. We actually had 3 officers on duty the night of the 3rd, but we dealt with a power line on fire that we assisted the fire department with. They dealt with one fireworks complaint that turned into a menacing, and so they were working through that. At the same time that call came in, they actually ended up responding to 2 different suicide attempts, and both of those people were able to get them to the hospital and get them help and support. In the middle of one of those, they were called away to investigate a possible home burglary, a house fire, and then actually a break-in to some vehicles. And so that is that period of time. Our 3 officers were pretty busy with those things. So we might have to figure out a way as a community how we're going to deal with these issues of the members of our community who don't deserve to have hours and hours and hours of fireworks many of which are not available for sale in the state of Oregon, going off in their neighborhoods. And again, it's not just a Monmouth problem, but I wanted to share that for people who were frustrated that those things weren't responded to in a timely fashion. And again, we may have to come up with some other community solutions to that, because those holidays and those times create a lot of stress for other folks. And as we are noticing in this time of talking about police funding and social services funding, clearly there are a lot of other needs, and our first responders have to be there for those. Speaking of that, I think we've each, and I know I've shared with council, I think we've each received many emails and comments supporting the speakers from our meetings 2 weeks ago. And the thoughtful remarks that were made certainly had an impact on me. I know they had an impact on many of you as well. And again, from the many comments we got from others in our community. We were asked to respond with a plan addressing 6 particular points, and we haven't met since then. So we don't have a plan to present. But I do have a couple of pieces of information for you on some of those things, and I want to respond to those. In addition to our discussion to come, Mayor McArdle and I, along with President Rex Fuller, met the night after our last council meeting, so July 8th, we met with 11 community members who broadly represent both cities. This is our Human Rights Community Roundtable that we had mentioned, and we meet a second time tomorrow night. At that meeting, we again heard about the 6 points, but we heard about a lot of other things that people in our community think would help bring about true equity, justice, and opportunity for people of color and other marginalized members of our community, and some broad members of our community as well. There was a lot of discussion about youth and the effects of current situations on our youth. So some of those 6 points, as well as many of these other points, I think will best be tackled by our 2 cities working together. And I have an example of that. Some of them will need to be city by city. So at our next meeting of our roundtable, we are formulating a call to action, and I will be reporting back on that. Then as a council, we can decide how best to tackle many of these issues which overlay each other or are dependent on each other in some ways. And I also want to thank many other community members who have expressed their willingness to become involved in additional work, whether it's by the city or by other organizations around justice and equity. For example, I took the time to learn about the STOP data, and I can report on that. We were asked to present a plan on that, but we were asked 3 things about STOP data. And STOP is the Statistical Transparency of Policing data collection that is run by the state's Criminal Justice Commission, and it is a collection of data to be reported annually to the governor, the legislature, and DPSST. That started in, I think, 2017, but it's tiered. So there is data available on a website, which we will publish. And right now, the only data that exists is for large cities and counties. That was the first tier of law enforcement agencies that needed to report. So then there's a second tier. Our data collection began in November of 2019, but it will not be published, and it's for 2020, and so it will be published in 2021 in this database. But the race and ethnicity data that is collected for that is actually based on the officer's first perceived observation of race. And if the officer reviews a driver's license and it contains race ethnicity data, that can be used to complete the report to stop. However, the state statute actually prohibits information from information that identifies either the individual being stopped or the officer. So that data is not collected and submitted based on actual identifying information such as a driver's license or residency or anything like that, or anything about the particular officer. So I've learned that we started that collecting and reporting that data in November, submitting it to the database. That, of course, it covers all stops by an officer, whether that person lives in Monmouth, whether the stop is made in Monmouth. Obviously, our officers make stops outside the city limits. And that data, the way it's collected, the website actually does a disparate impact analysis. So it doesn't give raw data, but it does look at the data in a variety of ways and compares and analyzes that data by impact on whites versus other races. So I think it's very interesting. And again, it's I think if you Google or search for Oregon.gov CJC, which is the Criminal Justice Commission stop data, you can actually go in and look at what data is being collected and reported. So we were asked 3 things regarding that data, and I'll just let you know, based on my research and in talking to the chief, our police department leadership was asked to review that data and discuss patterns of stops within the department as part of training. And that will be done. That is going to become a part of the training protocol. That's part of what this data is meant to do, to assist departments in training, in identifying patterns for their department. We were asked that the data be made public now for the existing information, and that the information be published annually. Again, the report itself and the website's super cool because you can filter by agency. So the data is, you can look at it aggregate for the state, but you can also on the website itself. So it will be very easy for us to remind folks when that data becomes available each year. Again, ours won't show up there for a while, but we will be able to direct people to that because it does show the analysis. And then we were also asked for the data to be disaggregated by officer to be used in internal personnel evaluations only. That cannot be done because per state statute, that data is not collected by individual officers. So at this time, that is not a use of the stop data. And currently our citation information wouldn't correlate with that, I don't believe. So that is something that would have to be worked on differently. But anyway, just wanted people to know that. You're certainly welcome to go look at that data yourself, and we can have further discussions about it. But that was 3 of the 6 points we were asked about, and I just wanted to educate myself on that. One of the other items, for example, that was asked of us was to talk about bias training. And interestingly enough, Chad and I have been speaking with our colleagues in Independence about joint bias training as part of our ongoing conversations about issues in the community. And so there is a really good intensive training called Courageous Conversations. Several folks in the school district have been through this, and others in the community have benefited from that training. So that was one we inquired about, and they're not offering it right now. And several other programs like that are not being offered right now because they usually require intensive personal interaction. So actually, we have approached Western Oregon University about how we can partner to bring something that would not only be bias training to our police department, but others to staff, us on council, and perhaps something that we can share in the community to create a shared vocabulary and awareness and determine how we can work through these difficult issues, particularly given the history of our state and our community on these issues. So that will be coming. It's not something that we can sign up for and have happen right away, but interestingly, the community health department does training on bias, and the criminal justice department at Western. Those are very much important parts of those curricula. So we hope to be able to develop something that we can deliver that doesn't require intense personal interaction, but will effectively help us learn to get through this together, to become better and better support the people of color and marginalized communities we serve. So I wanted to share that as well. And again, at our next meeting, I'll have more information about the roundtable and some of the action items that are coming out of that group for the city, for ways to partner with other organizations and other individuals in our community. So thank you. And do we have any other reports from council representatives or on boards or commissions? Chris Lopez.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I do have a report from MyNet. First, I'd like to note that, you know, just like many other organizations, MyNet is not immune from experiencing the effects of coronavirus. And there is one staff member that has been notified by a contact tracer that they have had exposure to someone who was verified positive for coronavirus. There is an unrelated incident, another staff member that is currently quarantining out of an abundance of caution because they were exposed to someone who is potentially has coronavirus. So these things are certainly going to impact every single one of us and every organization within our community at some point. So it's, you know, with a sober heart that I bring that news to you. Right now, we do not have any information about confirmed positives with any staff members of MyNet, but there are a couple concerning cases right now. On another note, I'd like to share that MyNet has generated and posted a diversity and inclusion statement. I'd like to read that to you now. This statement is currently on the website as well. Equality, inclusion, and diversity are core values at MyNet. Creating a culture of equality isn't just the right thing to do, it's also the smart thing. Our core values guide how we build our teams, cultivate leaders, and create a successful company. We believe businesses can be powerful platforms for social change by living their values and empowering each employee to always be their full, authentic self. MyNet takes pride in our unified commitment to excellence, innovation, and social responsibility. And that is the conclusion of my update. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Any other comments or boards and commission reports? All right. Seeing none, then we will move to the city manager report and then our citizen comments.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. So earlier I sent out a report, and I'm just going to go through the highlights. If you had a chance to take a look at that, feel free, of course, to ask any questions. But as it relates to COVID-19, I'll lead with me being just really kind of disappointed with the lack of mask wearing in the community and in the as far as it relates to the city in our park facilities. So when Polk County entered phase 2 and we relaxed the use of the parks, the shelters, the play equipment, and we brought out the picnic tables. And just, and I'm not saying this with certainty, it's just by observation, random observation, but just the lack of wearing masks in close quarters where they're not meeting this 6-foot distancing requirement. And the reason I'm leading with that is obviously because of the increases we're seeing in the state infection rates, and I just wanted to let you know that that is causing me concern as it relates to the community. And what's important to me is, is the health and welfare of our community and our staff. And what I'm worried about is just creating additional opportunities for groups to congregate without following the mask guidelines, the executive order from the governor. So with that exception, I think with the COVID, we're seeing the increased infection rates and the concern related to that as with the impact it has on our health system and the deaths that are associated with it. But locally, similar to what Councilor Lopez mentioned, we do have the occasional contact that happens with someone who has either been in contact or has tested positive, and knock on wood, so far we haven't had any that I recall infections in staff. We do have some people that have been quarantined or isolated because of their proximity of getting in close contact with those that have tested positive. So with that, some more interesting things that we are doing that's COVID related that I did want to highlight is the Business Oregon has sent out a notice, the EDA CARES Act projects. So there is a request to turn in COVID related projects that can benefit the state through economic development activities and job creation. And the staff and I are going to work to submit project applications by the end of the month. Those would be similar, I'm thinking, infrastructure projects that are what we talked about with the Urban Renewal Agency at the last meeting. So water projects, transportation projects, things like that. Also, there's the second round of the COVID relief fund distribution. So the city is scheduled to receive approximately $291,000 for COVID related expenses. Janet, the city finance director, the community development director, and I sat down and talked about the allocation of those funds and how we think they should be used. Of course, with this, the magnitude, we would bring it to council for council direction. But what we're looking at is approximately a 50-50 split of the $291,000, with half of the allocation being used for city COVID impacted expenses or related expenses, and the other half being used to support the Monmouth business community. So when you take a look at that, there's 5 areas that we would allocate or propose to allocate funding to, which includes the business assistance grants, where we would make direct awards to businesses based upon criteria that would not necessarily be similar to what we did with the grant loan program. So we don't have a lot of details. We're just figuring out the allocations, and then we'll circle back with an outline of the program. We're looking at some PPE assistance, purchasing and donations to local businesses, technical assistance support, which I notified the council of that. We are going in with a joint application with our Independence Commons and the City of Independence. I think those are the only two. So we would contribute $25,000 towards a technical assistance program. We would wait and see what Business Oregon would allocate for our use as part of that program. There's not it's not a dollar for dollar or a 2-to-1 type of program. Some marketing and advertising support for the community businesses, and then a business outreach and communications assistance program. So we would hire basically a contractor to provide assistance to the city with our communications and outreach to the business community. And with that, I'll stop there. There's a number of other items that I'm ready to report on if there's interest, but with that, I'll turn it back over to the mayor.
Any questions? All right, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I will echo our interim city manager's concerns about the really sort of minimal effort that would be needed to show not only concern for other folks in the community, but actually statistically, scientifically, medically would stop the spread of this disease. The current governor's executive order requires facial coverings indoors if people are unable to socially distance, physically distance, and required mask wearing even outdoors if people are unable to do that. We have a lot of parents in the community who would like to see the splash pad open, but it's a little easier to contain your family unit at a picnic table or even perhaps on playground equipment than it is on the splash pads. So I don't think we have any intention of opening that at this time. We are unable to comfortably believe we could do that safely. I can tell you the school district is not allowing any use of our facilities by the community at all, and that is unlikely to change. We do have student athletes who are doing strength and conditioning. They must be outdoors. We have paid monitors on staff to make sure that those conditioning drills are being handled responsibly, but we are not anticipating athletic practices. And in fact, I believe on Friday, the Oregon State Athletic Association is announcing their determination about what they're going to do about fall athletics. We have Western Oregon University. Their conference has just announced that fall sports are suspended until at least November. So there will be no fall football, cross country, women's soccer, or volleyball at Western this fall for the foreseeable future. And frankly, tomorrow, the governor will be announcing a new guidelines for schools to reopen. So that is coming as well. And everybody, I believe that there are major concerns about how we can do this safely. So thanks for that.
Yeah. Thank you.
So we'll take this time for citizen comments, and I will start with a couple here in the room. So we do have a station over here, and I will call Rebecca Salinas Oliveros first to come up and join us, and your name and the city where you reside.
wanted to keep my mask on as an example.
Good example.
We do. We are actually doing them while we move around the room. Any minute one of us gets up from this table, that's what these are for.
That's great. Okay, can you hear me okay?
Mhm.
Okay. My name is Rebecca Salinas Oliveros, Monmouth resident. At the last City Council meeting, our community group presented 6 proposals that would begin the process of making Monmouth a safe place for all our residents. Today, we would like to provide a story that demonstrates that our residents of color live in fear from the harassment they experience from other Monmouth residents, as well as the police. We hope the story continues to help the City Council understand the critical need to make changes in our city so that everyone can feel safe. The following story is from a mother who lives in Monmouth. On July 7th, at approximately 12 in the afternoon, my African-American daughter was walking with a friend on Talmadge Road when a man in a lifted red truck came to a complete stop to call her the N-word. I attempted to post a PSA on a community Facebook forum. My post was declined because I was said to be stirring the pot. I was then told that it couldn't be posted because of possible retaliation of people driving red trucks. I pointed out the irony that they were more concerned about people driving red trucks than that of a child with brown skin. Again, I was told I was stirring the pot. A few days later, while walking with another friend, my daughter was pulled over by the police because they had reports of someone laying in the street. Although the description was that of someone wearing a striped shirt, which she was not wearing, the officer followed my daughter and her friend down the road in his police car. Due to these events, I limit my daughter's activities with her friends. I don't feel safe allowing her to walk with friends. A child should be able to walk in town in the middle of the day without harassment. A mother should feel as though she has the support of her community when harassment of her child occurs. I know the history of Polk County. I know the history of Oregon. This is the year 2020. These things should not be tolerated. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. And Christine McDowell. To your name and the city where you reside, please.
Good evening. My name is Christine McDowell, and I'm a resident of Monmouth. At the last City Council meeting, our community group made 6 requests with the goal of helping Monmouth become a city where all its residents, regardless of identity, would feel safe. One of the requests was that the police chief monitor the demographics of stop data of the Monmouth police officers in order to identify any patterns of stops. This evening, we would like to provide a specific example that provides evidence of racial harassment by some members of the Monmouth Police Department. The following story was given to our group so we could inform the council about an individual's experience with 2 Monmouth police officers. We hope that this story encourages the City Council to act so all our residents feel valued in our community and not fearful. As a dark-skinned Mexican male, I do not feel the police department has my best interest in mind, nor do I trust them. There are several personal experiences I have had that make this my reality. My senior year of high school, I was excited for graduation and even more excited about the job I was about to get. I had made it to the final round of interviews, and the interview panel expressed their excitement of working with me in the future and just needed to do the last round of interview and figure out the paperwork, then I could get started. I was so excited to have a job that provided benefits as I came from a family who all work in the fields or construction. Then my encounter with the police changed everything. Me and my 3 Mexican guy friends were walking to the store in Independence to get some soda and chips to eat while we played FIFA video games. Once we bought our stuff and were leaving the store, there were 2 Monmouth cops that were pulling into the parking lot. The cops turned on their lights, and knowing we had not done anything, assumed that they were not pulling us over, but the cops got out of the car and came over to talk to us. They asked what we were doing, and we told them we had just got some food and were going home to play video games. The cops said they knew we were lying and been drinking alcohol. We told them we hadn't and were just drinking soda and showed them our bags. They refused to listen and had us all line up and sit on the curb while they questioned us one at a time. The whole time their lights were on. They continued to harass us for over 40 minutes. I don't remember one of the cops' names, but I know one was named Hamilton. He was very demeaning and rude and lied to each of us individually, saying, "The sooner you admit you're drinking, the faster we can be done. And your friend over there just admitted that you guys are drinking, and if you don't, you will all be in big trouble." I refused to give in to Hamilton's harassment and did not lie. I told the truth and said we were not drinking and just wanted to go home. When they asked for our names, he made a racist remark about our names being predictable and the same. My friend asked if we could just take a breath test so we could show we weren't drinking, and they said no. But then, 35 minutes later, they said we all had to take the breathalyzer test. Once we all blew zeros, the officer let us go, one saying, "Sorry, it's just our job," and Hamilton refusing to apologize or attempt to reconcile the situation. This encounter was humiliating as community members all stared as they walked and drove past, looking at the lights and us all sitting there. The image of 3 young Mexican men in trouble by the police adding to the stereotypes and racism that I have to deal with every day. This encounter with the cops affected my future because one of the people who saw this humiliating encounter was my potential future boss, once seeing me in trouble with the cops. When I came in to finalize the paperwork, they had said that they decided to go in another direction as more information had come up. I have a clean record, and I know the information was them seeing me in trouble with the law. After that, I went to work in the fields, long, hard days with no insurance or benefits because of the officer's lack of awareness, racial profiling, and refusal to listen to truth. It changed my future.
Thank you, Christine.
Thank you.
Phyllis, do we have any, looks like we have some callers online. Do we have any public comments from callers?
I have no one who has contacted me through the chat to let me know they want to talk.
All right, if anyone identifies themselves as interested in making public comment, we don't have names here, so. All right, seeing none. Thank you. Thank you. We have one item tonight on our business agenda and then one work session item. And so we'll go ahead and go forward and take care of those. On the business agenda tonight, and something that's been in the works for quite a while, and that is the actual formation of an intergovernmental entity to support the Mid-Willamette Valley Homeless Alliance and declaring an emergency in order to adopt ordinance number 1393 and have it carry forward. Chad, do you want to just give us a little brief update on this since you've been involved in this?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the City Council. So yeah, just to make it short, everyone's been working on this for quite some time, and I'm happy to bring it to the council for adoption. The IGA essentially, so if you remember in April, the council approved an interim agreement to bridge the gap until the partners that are going to be signatures to the IGA could just work out the details. That's going to expire August 13th. So this 190 agreement is put before the council for approval. It will replace that, go into effect, and primarily what it does is create a legal entity to support the alliance, create a understanding between the participating members of a collaborative and cooperative means of raising funds and addressing homelessness in the Marion, Polk counties and the City of Salem. So attached to the agreement, you can see the different members that will be participants to the agreement. And I'm just obviously homelessness is such a devastating issue in a lot of communities. I really admired the community in the two counties taking a proactive approach to setting up a well, this entity, but also the alliance to take positive steps towards addressing the issue. And with that, the only thing I will point out is during the past few years, staff has been the primary support person participating with the alliance. And as far as the membership to it, I want to point out that it can be either staff or a council member, the mayor, somebody, one of the elected officials could do that. And so I just want to make sure you were aware of that.
I am aware of that. Thank you so much, Mr. Olson. And first of all, if we enter into this agreement, then I'll take care of part B of that business. So yes, this is taking this regional approach, Marion and Polk counties together, as understanding that there is a lot of opportunity for folks to cross back and forth, especially particularly with West Salem being in both counties. So we really appreciate being a part of this. We have budgeted a small amount of money in the past just for a membership in this organization. And what this really does is leverage federal dollars, which you've heard this before. It's called a continuum of care. And that right now we are in an alliance with 17 or more of Oregon's counties. And so any little piece that would come, particularly to Polk County, would not reflect the total federal dollars and leverage other money that is available to start to work on this issue. So appreciate all the support. Scott McClure served as our representative. Chad has taken over. Lane has worked with other attorneys to develop agreements. And I would entertain a motion to adopt ordinance number 1393, authorizing the formation of an intergovernmental entity to support the Mid-Willamette Valley Homeless Alliance and authorizing the mayor to sign the intergovernmental agreement for the formation of such entity, declaring an emergency so we don't have a second reading of this ordinance. And again, that's partly because of this deadline for the temporary agency authorization, which is expiring.
Just if I can, Madam Mayor, actually, technically you will have a second reading. This has been set up so that you can have first and second reading tonight and adopt it. As long as it passes unanimously, that's permitted under the terms of the charter. And again, you've seen this a number of times before. The group is anxious to get all of the entities adopted as soon as possible so that they have a clear showing of interest and membership from the member entities. That's why we've set it up for first and second reading tonight.
All right, thank you. So I'm not just reading this by title, but I actually am asking for the motion to adopt. Is that correct, Lane?
First, you would declare that it's passed its first reading.
Okay.
And then you would put it before the council the same way you would on a second reading.
Thank you.
Yeah, Byron had his hand up.
Yep. Question, Councillor Schinkel.
I was going to make a motion, but I need to wait until you declare the first reading, I think.
We'll leave you unmuted so that I can declare first reading of ordinance number 1393 as read by title. That has been read, and now a second reading and adoption of the ordinance. And unless there are additional questions, seeing none, please go ahead, Byron.
I move to adopt ordinance number 1393, authorizing the formation of an intergovernmental entity to support the Mid-Willamette Valley Homeless Alliance and authorizing the city manager to sign the intergovernmental agreement for the formation of such entity and declaring this an emergency.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. I'm going to ask for a clarification because my copy of the ordinance says that I have to sign it, and the motion indicated that the city manager signs it. So,
Yeah, so the clarification on that is you will sign the ordinance and I'll sign the agreement.
okay, there we go. Although it says I will sign the agreement in the title of the ordinance.
And Scribner error, Lane?
You're on mute, Lane. Reading your lips as far as legal.
Yeah, that's not a material difference. It's not going to affect the ordinance. You can assign the ordinance and Chad can sign the agreement.
All right, thank you very much. And any other questions? Phyllis, if you will please do the roll call.
Counselor Silbernagel,
Aye.
Counselor Carey,
Aye.
Counselor Schinkel,
Yes.
Counselor Sharmer,
Yes.
Counselor Belds,
Aye.
Counselor Lopez.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And motion passes unanimously. As Chad mentioned, we do need to appoint a representative to the board of this new alliance. And I have actually spoken to Counselor Lopez, who has expressed interest in serving on that board. I would entertain a motion for his appointment unless someone else would like to express their interest in being the Monmouth representative going forward.
I move that Counselor Lopez be appointed as a board member.
Second.
And thank you very much. I see a motion from Counselor Schinkel and second from Counselor Carey. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 I seventh that. Thank you so much, Counselor Lopez, for agreeing to do this, and we'll be putting him in touch right away with the other folks who are have been working on this issue. So that is all we have for our business agenda. Are there any council comments before we move to work session? All right, seeing none, I will adjourn our adjourn to our business session. And if I might indulge a 4-minute break, before that, we will log off and return at what says 8 o'clock on this clock. I don't know what your all clocks say. So, oh no, that's 8 minutes according to my phone. So you can't have 8 minutes. We'll go at 7:58 by my clock. So we'll be back around 8. Thanks.
I ask her, hey, Phyllis. Phyllis.
As we reconvene, and I'll ask everyone to turn their camera on so I can make sure you're back with us. This work session, Stormwater Master Plan presentation, we are choosing not to stream it live. So if someone is watching YouTube right now and with the interest in watching the presentation live, we are going to stop the live stream of the meeting because this is our only remaining agenda item. And however, we will be recording it via GoToMeeting, and that link will be posted, and anyone in the community who is interested in stormwater planning will be able to go back and watch later. So thank you if you were watching live. And I see that we have returned. Councillor Silbernagel's not showing himself, so I will. We will show that he is not presently on video, but we will go ahead anyway and call to order the work session of July 21st. And there he is. Hi, Darren. Turn this over to Chad, Suzanne, or
Actually, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll turn this over to Public Works Director Russ Cooper to introduce the FCS group for the stormwater utility presentation. Russ? Need to unmute.
All right, let's try that. How's that? Ooh.
Turn off your microphone. There you go.
or turn off your speaker. Not your microphone.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Turn on your microphone, turn off the speaker, the sound level on your computer.
He's one of the phone callers. He's calling through. See when he talks. Russ, did you call in on the phone too? Gotta unmute yourself.
Maybe Russ is just going to.
Russ, did you call in on your phone?
I called in on my cell phone. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. Did you mute your computer speakers?
And the mic now, if you're speaking on your phone.
Oh. Did we lose you, Russ, or are you still there?
How about if, while we're waiting for Russ to come back, how about if I introduce John and, well, the FCS group, John and Doug, who's been working with the city for the past year or more as it relates to the creation of the possible stormwater utility. So what, John or Doug?
We can go ahead, Chad.
Yeah, why don't you guys just go ahead and start the presentation for the council?
Okay, thank you. And then Doug, are you controlling the slides, or is Russ? Do you happen to know?
I am in control.
Oh, awesome. So Doug and I are going to tag team this presentation, and our sort of broad objective is to give you a quick refresh. You'll remember, I think, as we go through some of these slides, all the much of the work that's been done, and then Doug will spend the bulk of our time talking about the outreach and reporting back to you on the results of the outreach that has been associated with this project. So I will briefly touch on the stormwater system needs, the sort of broad question of why a stormwater utility, why go this way at all. We'll talk about the different levels of service, that sort of menu of level of service options. And then Doug will report on the outreach, and then we'll talk about possible next steps. So stormwater system needs. We know there are 2 drainage basins in the city, one emptying into the north and middle forks of Ash Creek, and the other flowing east into the south fork of Ash Creek. So we have to care for the drainage in order not to degrade the water quality of Ash Creek, and also control flows into Ash Creek and into the system. The Monmouth storm drain system, the collection system, has a number, more than a number, many small pipes, catch basins, and open ditches that serve to convey stormwater runoff into receiving waters. Some of the problems that are associated with the system now, many of those pipes are undersized for the amount of runoff that's generated, and there's inadequate funding for stormwater capital improvements that are needed to and replacements that are needed to improve the performance of that system. So there are a few goals to a stormwater utility and forming a stormwater utility. For one, really all we're doing is we're taking a service which is now funded within the street fund and carving it out and creating a self-sufficient enterprise supported by rates. What that does is it allows this stormwater program to go on and provide basic services. It sets you up very nicely to meet regulatory requirements, of which there are many related to stormwater management. It will allow the city, if it chooses, to enhance the leaf pickup program, reduce some of that localized flooding we saw on the previous slide, be more proactive with regards to maintenance. And then also, importantly, it has a secondary benefit, which to some is a primary benefit. It takes that money from the street fund, which is now being spent on stormwater management, and moves it to a self-sustaining enterprise, so the street fund money can be spent on street maintenance rather than spending some of it on stormwater management. So that allows you to address street needs with street fund money. The utility concept, I touched on it a little bit. What we're talking about is a business enterprise within the city government, so it's financially self-sufficient, supported by rates. You can't use the revenue for anything other than stormwater management in a stormwater utility. You structure the rates so that the people who are generating the more stormwater management, because they have larger developed footprints, pay more under the rate structure. So you have equitable cost recovery in that regard. It's well suited because the council from year to year can make adjustments to those rates. It's well suited to meet regulatory requirements as they change into the future. You have to report on the money that came in, how it was spent in the financial report. So it's transparent to the public. They can see where the money went. You also have to budget the stormwater fund so they can see where the money's going. So in that regard, it is accountable. This is the menu I was talking about. We worked very, very hard with an engineering firm, Keller, and with city staff. And each row in this table is what we're calling an optional level of service. So we've labeled that top row under the titles, the basic level of service, which allows the city to, if there are failures, essentially, the city has enough money to react to the most severe failures and replace that infrastructure. This level of service, and you see that total budget about $278,000 a year, would also allow the city over time to complete the stormwater master plan and the three drainage projects which are in the capital plan. Those are the stadium Church Creek, Church Street improvements, the Cooper's View overflow, and the Madrona open ditch. It allows the city to do basic maintenance to the system, some public education, the street sweeping and leaf hauling programs, and train staff on some of the maintenance procedures. I'm going to move down to optimal now. This is the one where we asked Keller to cost out what it would take to meet regulatory requirements that we know are coming and get out ahead of those. That optimal level of service you see would be a little less than $700,000 a year. This would allow the city to replace infrastructure that we know is failing or ready to fail more proactively at prescribed frequencies, complete the capital projects, maintain the system at recommended frequencies. That is, you know, if you got to go out and clean pipes once or twice a year, this would allow you to do that and not respond to issues. And a increased public education, formal O&M, that's maintenance practices associated with water quality, check on construction sites to make sure that they are in compliance, training staff. And then the medium one, which is in between, was the one that acknowledges that optimal is a huge leap from where the city is now. So this would continue to provide reactive infrastructure replacement, but not just on severe problems, on more moderate problems, a little more proactive with the maintenance, but still not at recommended frequencies, community partnership, increased public education, and you see that one as the middle ground at a little over $400,000 per year. There are rates associated with each of these levels of service, which we'd be happy to remind you of. But what we really want to focus on is your preferred service levels.
So we'd like to take some time now to talk about the outreach efforts, both what we did and what we learned. Now, I know it's been over a year, but I'm sure you remember April 16th, 2019, like it was yesterday, because that was the first time John and I sat before you and described what a stormwater utility could look like. What you may not remember is that was also the very day that we were in front of Western Oregon University, talking to them from the very beginning about what a stormwater utility would look like, what their involvement in it would be, and what they could expect in terms of financial obligation. That started all the way back in April of 2019. In between April and October, we did the financial analysis. We calculated some rates. By October, it was time to talk to you guys again. But also on that very night, we were in front of Western Oregon University just a couple of hours before the city council meeting, letting them know what we had found in the rate analysis. And so so all of this is to say that we have been very under the guidance of staff. We have been very proactive in reaching out to Western. After that point, we moved into what was really the discrete outreach phase of the stormwater utility project, and that began with stakeholder interviews in December of 2019, culminated in that wonderful open house at the Yeasty Beastie in February. Who knew that a month later that kind of gathering was going to be impossible? So we have some good memories and even a picture or two of that gathering. In addition, much more recent than that, Mr. Cooper has information on a presentation he made to the Monmouth Business Association on May 6th. We'll be focusing on the items above that. So let's talk about these stakeholder interviews. With the help of our partner, Barney and Worth, these interviews were held during last December. There were 15 participants. Now you may notice that there are not 15 bullet points under there. I did want to give you a sense of the coverage. Many critical organizations are represented. but not everybody came from a big organization. And so that catch-all at the bottom, there were also citizens, developers, and small business owners. So the intent was to create a real cross-section of Monmouth, and I think that we were successful in doing that. But in any case, these are the organizations represented by in these stakeholder interviews. These are interviews. This is one-on-one interaction. So we're just going to share with you some of the feedback that we got from those interviews. At the time that we had these conversations, it was clear that there was still not a lot of understanding about what a stormwater utility is and what is stormwater even. So not a lot of understanding of what that is. And so for that reason, people were still open to the idea of a stormwater utility, but they wanted to make sure that they were educated about the benefits. They wanted this to be sold to them in a way that it was clear what they were getting out of it. And so it was recommended that there would be additional community engagement and education regarding the rate setting methodology. All this is foreshadowing all the things that we did next, but there was that middle bullet, stakeholders are interested in learning about the benefits to the street fund. So this was an interesting little learning that was later confirmed at the Eastie Beastie in some interactions that I had. But I got some very, well, I'll tell you more about it at that time. But just to foreshadow here, you get people's attention when you say setting aside money for a stormwater utility frees money for maintaining the streets. People are interested in the streets, and so that is a source of motivation. The low and moderate rate scenarios did not meet with too much resistance on the condition that the benefits be explained, and that stakeholders are concerned about impacts to developers and businesses. So to get a little more scientific about this, we gave a questionnaire to the participants in the stakeholder interviews on a scale of 1 to 5. What do you rate the importance of each activity? And all of these activities are related to stormwater, but it's a very clear result. Do not mess with the leaf collection program. This is very important to people. Coming in second, a very clear concern about pollution and how a stormwater utility could help mitigate that pollution. And so you see, and even something as functional as replacing undersized or failing stormwater pipes gets some amount of love, which is interesting to me, because that's, I would think that would be more for infrastructure nerds, but there is a concern about that, and which I consider quite healthy. In any case, you see here the breakdown of the things that are considered more important and the things that are considered less important. Finally, the open house. So it was as if when we did the stakeholder interviews, we clearly got the message that people wanted more education. They wanted to understand better what a stormwater utility was all about. And what they didn't realize is that was coming. So that's what this event was all about. The open house was February 24th for 2 hours in the evening at the Eastie Beastie. There were at least 48 attendees, which in our business, that's a really well-attended outreach event. The group included ratepayers, community members, business owners, major customers, city council, again, a cross-section of folks that you would want in there. I can prove that I was there. I don't know if you can see my cursor on the screen, but you can see my head above one of those signs, which is the perfect shot of me, because neck down, it doesn't get any better. But I was there.
Close, right? Also pretty close to the pizza table.
Yeah, well, yeah, it is impolite of you to point that out, but yes, that's absolutely true. So about 12 comment cards were filled out. We have that data. There was some interest in a senior discount. We're passing that along because somebody said that. But mainly what we got is just a lot of curiosity about the program and what it was all about. And that's what all of these displays were all about. It was people were going from display to display. City staff were there. I know that Russ Cooper and Mark Landau were answering a bunch of questions, just like John Ghilarducci and I were answering a bunch of questions. Very curious about the program. And personally, some of my interactions with folks were about this question of, so what's the connection with the streets? And I was able to explain that once you get a dedicated source of funding for stormwater, there is a benefit to accrue to streets, and people seemed interested in that. So I passed that on. There was even some enthusiasm for things like, exploring incentives for on-site mitigation, downspout disconnection, composting yard waste. People enthusiasm for getting folks to do the right thing, which is kind of what stormwater is all about. In the end, the bottom line was that we found that respondents were, by and large, supportive of the utility. Of course, they're concerned about how much money they're going to have to pay, but they do seem to indicate that this is the right thing to do and that we should be going down this path. So, John, where do we go from there?
So the potential next steps, if you have feedback or additional direction for us, there may be more work for us to do. If your direction is to move forward, we would provide a draft ordinance and a resolution. The ordinance would be forming the stormwater utility. The resolution would set the initial rate and the value of the equivalent service unit for your future consideration, and then implementation at whatever effective date you choose to set.
So that's the cue for.
All right.
Oh, we got Russ.
If we can hear Russ, only himself and not three of him. Did you know?
I thought we had him for a minute.
No, I think we might have. Yeah. He's there. He's
unmute your phone, Russ. I think he's caller 3 or 5.
Yeah, now it looks like, Russ, if you're on your cell phone, you muted your cell phone, and maybe if you unmute that, as long as everything on your computer is muted except the video.
I'm on my phone.
Good.
Yes.
So if you can track me as a caller, unmute that one.
We can hear you, and we do not hear ourselves through your computer. So you are good to speak, Mr. Cooper.
Oh, no.
Oh, we lost him.
What was that?
You got me now? Phone caller, you got me. Okay, don't mute me again. Thank you.
There we go.
So I wanted to bring up a couple of points. Most of the outreach activities occurred before the coronavirus outbreak. The only activity that I can think of that happened after the outbreak or in the middle of it was a presentation to the Monmouth Business Associations. At that time, there was pretty good attendance at the meeting. I gave a presentation, provided access to the information on the city's website, as well as encouraged business owners to give me a call if they had questions or concerns. There was not a lot of feedback from business owners during the meeting. After the meeting, I received one email request just asking for a sense of what their rate might be based on the 3 different service levels. So I wanted to share that. And then also identify that the city's fiscal year budget included this dedicated stormwater utility fund, and the plan was for it to be implemented in, begin collecting revenue in October. To meet that timeline, we would need to, bring the ordinance to council, back to council in August for your review and adoption. So tonight, staff is definitely looking for feedback concerning how you wish to proceed with developing the ordinance.
Russ, I have a question, and John and Doug, we may have you take down your presentation, unless folks have questions about it, but oh, maybe some do. I was curious, Russ, we mentioned obviously Western, we always think of, that's our biggest utility customer, period. But at the time, we really didn't have a bunch of stuff in the S-curves. So as we've progressed through planning and development of Ash Creek Station, have we had conversations with Fox or with those building owners about this potential addition to their utility bills?
We've not had sit-down meetings specific to the stormwater utility. I believe both of those businesses would be aware that we were in the process, but I can't confirm that either.
And did we try to engage Bi-Mart at all? Just our other sort of large parking lot?
Yes, we did reach out to Bi-Mart. They were one of the stakeholder groups.
Okay, thanks. Other questions? John Kerry.
Will there be a final report, or is this it?
There will be a final, I'm sorry, as it pertains to our work, there will be a final written report summarizing all the work that's been done, issue papers, the analytical work. Is that what you were asking?
Yeah. I mean, this was a thumbnail sketch, which was good and nicely presented, but there's the devil's in the detail. I'm not quite sure which each of those, the definition of some of the terms on each of the different levels are, and I could ask that question if I were to be able to go through that with some time to digest, and then how we get to because we plugged in a dollar amount that was derived somehow into our budgeting process as a placeholder. That was alluded to, but I don't see any formulaic work on that.
I can share what the rate that was in the budget process. That was for the mid-range service level, the medium service level, and
it was like $16 or something.
Yes, and staff's intent with that was just to appropriate a dollar amount, knowing that council would be making a decision on what the actual rate would be. We just wanted to appropriate a dollar amount.
Yeah, and that was wise and once again well presented. How do we get to that number? And how do we get to the actual number?
This is Cease. So I have a question for Doug and John. Has that changed since we got an in-depth presentation before? I know you said the methodology, you've had some engineering help, but we did have an in-depth presentation before about how that's calculated. Has that changed much?
No, it has not.
That's correct. It has not.
And that I don't blame you for maybe not being fresh in your minds. That was, I believe it was October, but we did go through in detail the levels of service, the actual rate calculations, and that was intended to be the heavier lift information wise, but we could certainly provide you with that packet. We just can't do it tonight.
And as was mentioned, you will be getting a complete documentation of all the calculations in our report. If we're looking for an ordinance in August, then it might be prudent to work on that first. But yes, there will be a complete report of the analysis.
John and Doug, it seems to me that the report that you're talking about that was more in-depth was the second presentation, and on the city's website is the PowerPoint presentation for that, that contains a lot of that information. So it gives a sense of the, revenue requirements, capital improvement, and then it kind of breaks down. While I don't know for Councilor Carey's point, I don't know that it gets into the details of the real specifics of what makes what identifies maintenance or riparian health or public education. But it kind of hits those at a higher level in the report.
Well, one of the things that we had cursory discussion about, as I recall, but again, it's been a while. Was any consideration of anything done to mitigate the on-site runoff? We referenced the S-curve development, Ash Creek Station down there. There's a lot of money spent on that stormwater retention pond. And, I guess it would be nice to know whether or not, they will derive any benefit from that, or whether their rate would be based upon, the square foot calculation of the parking lot and the roofs. And that maybe is just fine. I'm not judging it one way or the other, but I would be curious about, the dialogue on that.
So if I may, Russ, we did hear some interest in credits, and we have an analytical approach that we've used to derive sort of a recommended credit. So if someone did exceeded essentially the city's development requirements and provided on-site mitigation, then we've shown that that could warrant a rate credit, and we could write that into the ordinance. It changes the rate calculation slightly, so the rate to everyone else has to go up a little bit to provide for those expected credits, but it's not a huge amount, and I think that the credit we could support analytically was about 40% for a qualifying customer. So the rates that we quoted and showed in October and at the EastBC, the open house, did not include that credit, but if that's a feature you would like, we can write that into the ordinance at the what we believe is a defensible 40% level.
And I think I'll say again, John, what you had mentioned with regard to the S curves is the developer, based on regulatory requirements, not only imposed by the city, but also by the state and federal requirements, was the driver for those facilities. So regardless of whether or not we have a stormwater utility, they still have to construct those facilities, and so the credit would be for a business that went above and beyond and somehow reduced, at some significant level, their impact on the stormwater system. And I think we talked about previously that with credits, we want to make sure that there's a good balance between the value of the credit and the administrative oversight of issuing credits to make sure that we aren't burdening the city's resources trying to chase and evaluate credits over time.
That's a key point.
Yep, that presentation, which I pulled up from the website, does talk about that, as well as that single family residents are usually not provided credit. I assume partially, again, this administrative burden. How do you calculate that? Even if people put in open pavers instead of a cement driveway, there's very little effect and difficult to calculate. So,
and the dollar reduction, and the dollar reduction is not that material for the amount of administrative burden that you impose going out and checking all of those. You want a credit program that's tight enough so that it's actually saving the utility some money, these on-site activities, that would warrant a rate credit. And so there won't be a lot of customers, but a handful of commercial customers who exceed your standards who would be available to get a rate credit like that in our proposal.
Yeah, and John, on the website, on Public Works, and if you click on stormwater utility, it actually has two sets of slides. The second one it talks about those key components that they mentioned, which things are included or not included under the basic, medium, and optimal level of service, and it has the rates. So there are two presentations, and the second one goes through all that. That's also the one that compares us to other rates. And so just kind of a brief on that at the time, and I don't know if these calculations change, but comparing single family residents, it showed the optimal rate would put us about $25.67 a month, which would be the highest of the comparators. Salem at $17.17, Dallas with a low of $2.78. Our medium would actually make us the second highest. It would put us between Salem and Kaiser.
That's right.
And that's that $16.64 a month. Independence was showing on here at $13.26 a month. And so the basic rate of $11.88 a month for a residential customer would put us under Independence, but ahead of Corvallis, Newport, Albany, and Dallas, as I mentioned.
So can I just ask, so that information was when was that done?
That was October. So some of those other communities might have changed.
Yeah. So I'm assuming
it was their last adopted rate they were using in October. So if other cities have altered their rates. Other questions? Because they really are kind of hoping that tonight we will be able to say, yes, we want to go forward. What's our level of service? And which of these sort of other programs or credits or discounts do we want them to pursue and look at so that we can get the ordinance drafted and move forward in order to meet the admittedly sort of budget-driven, arbitrary-ish deadline of October for implementation. I need more questions or comments to give them some marching orders. Chris Lopez, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do recall the previous conversations, and while I appreciate the amount of outreach that you had done at the beginning of the year, I'm not sure that we've had a real opportunity for the public to give council feedback, and I'm not sure if that's what's driving some of the hesitancy here to speak, but I know that it makes me a little hesitant to say, well, we've got 3 paths, let's pick one. I've gotten a lot of great information from you all, but I don't know that I have the information from our residents, or the feedback from our residents in a manner that allows me to move forward with confidence. And so that's, I'm not sure if there are others in a similar spot. I do thank you for the research regarding neighboring rates. That does help us, or that does help me. But I do feel like there's a little bit of an information gap regarding the public.
And okay, thank you for that, Chris. Do you have a proposal as to what kind of information you would like to gather before you would feel comfortable with that? Because the education piece about what is stormwater utility, obviously it's not just a survey at this point, I'm afraid. And we have 4 paths. Don't do this at all. Basic, medium, optimal. Or probably some Cadillac above that, we haven't even talked about.
or of course, or anything in between.
Or anything in between.
Yeah,
right?
And just to Councilor Lopez's comment, the community outreach piece is always difficult. When you're looking at creating a new utility like this, you want to have, you want to ensure some degree of robust community engagement to get feedback. To some extent, or to a great extent, I think the Barney Worth was intended to do that with the outreach to the 15 or so stakeholders that they reached out to the interview to solicit that feedback. The open house meeting over at the pizza parlor and things like that. And I agree 100% with your comment. You always want to go out and educate the public as to any significant program that you're looking to start. So while the mayor said it, I was thinking the exact same thing. What does that look like? And because this is unfortunately, I think to some degree the reality is. You can do open houses and get a great turnout of 40 people, in a community of 10,000. You can do town hall meetings, you can do newsletters, you can do all kinds of things. And I'm just not sure you're going to, this community penetration piece to solicit this feedback, to educate, what you should do for the next step. And I think about that. And so when the mayor asked, what are your thoughts on that? For me to, go and design some strategy to do that, I really need that from the council as to what does that look like, so I can ensure to design a strategy that satisfies that. Otherwise, what I would be worried about is an exercise that may or may not provide the information or the feedback that you're looking for.
Yeah.
Well, I think, and I'm looking right now on our website, and essentially we're being asked to give a direction on a resolution or an ordinance that will be passed in the future. So what we're being asked now is to give specific direction on, you know, an avenue. The ordinance will be passed. Of course, we will have some, you know, ability to modify that afterward. But major modifications, if I'm understanding correctly, major modifications afterward, such as moving from one tier to another, would require further work by our consultants and duplication of work. But right now we're being able to or we're being asked to make that decision as it was. I'm not seeing on our website that this topic was listed publicly for people to even be able to give commentary regarding the decision through the normal process, much less a larger, you know, outreach process. But when I look at our agenda and packet, there isn't anything on the website currently about you know, this being a topic. And at the very least, if we are doing this and making this kind of decision tonight, I'd like to invite public comments. Maybe no one would show up. There's a lot of times that no one shows up, but this is a big one, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Agreed.
and at the time, we did have lots of public outreach, I remember, right? It's kind of hard because we have the town halls going on about City Hall, and then we had public outreach. I know there were opportunities for other comment, but it has been a while, and you know, certainly people's interest in paying additional money may have changed, and it is hard when this isn't fresh in your mind. Byron, did you have something?
Yeah, I had a couple of questions. So Russ, in the budget, correct me if I'm wrong, we planned for the medium level of service. Is that what you included in the budget process?
That's what the budget was based off of, correct.
And then on these, the basic, median, and optimal, are these self-sustaining, cost neutral? Like, we're not going to have to move other monies around. The new fees will cover all of the costs of the new utility.
That's correct. That's the intent.
Okay. That's all I have.
Yeah, I think that's a good point about the budget process, because we really did discuss this in detail with our budget committee. And those, as we know, are some very active and vocal folks. And so that was another opportunity to revisit. Roxanne, did you have something?
Yeah, I mean, maybe this is too much after the fact, but thinking in terms of the outreach, we kind of did what we always do, which is we have, you know, a town hall, the same 40 people show up at each of the meetings. I feel like we're kind of, as council, being asked to come up with some other ways in which that communication can happen. And since I do that kind of for a living with the bus company, it's the same issue. I mean, we have it everywhere. The same people show up at the open houses and all that. But there are some other things. And I don't even think with the community, it's so much that they'll be like, oh my gosh, this is going to cost so much money. But nobody knows about it. Nobody knows. It's just going to show up on a bill one day and they're going to be like, what am I paying for? And so in some ways I feel like there's just this gap of people feeling like they need to understand what it is. As you said, how is this going to help the streets? If we're taking from this bucket and we're going to put it into this bucket, and this is what we're going to get for it. But we've been paying for that so far, and now we're asking the community to pay for it. So maybe I'm rambling a little, but I just feel like there hasn't been enough education, not asking people's input, but just telling them this is what a storm utility is, and this is why we do it, and this is what's in it for you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think you're absolutely right. Putting together a fun, informative eye-catching explanation once we decide, if we decide to go forward, I think is huge. I think that would be a huge thing. And I guess if it's felt like that's super important and putting something in a future utility bill to explain we're doing this and delay the process, I'm not saying we couldn't do that. So whether it's putting that out there and then getting feedback, additional feedback, or making it as part of the actual communication of a decision.
So, yeah, can I?
And then Laurel, Chad, and then Laurel.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so the rollout program. So yes, what Councilor Belts said is there's a rollout piece that would happen with this, and certainly we would not want to go from 0 to 100 and just all of a sudden on the utility bills people get whatever that fee is. There's steps required in addition to from this point on. So there is that. There is also, and circling back to the levels, so there were 3 levels that were identified: level of services, the low, medium, high is just how I think of them. And they can be, they're services that we can educate the public. I mean, the piece that was done over the past, at least while I've been here, was to work with stakeholder groups to solicit feedback to us. It was, to some extent, it was intended like the Yeasty Beastie was to, again, it was an open house to provide some education, but to try to get some feedback. I think, obviously there's a gap piece that would have to be performed to this rollout education piece to educate the public about the new utility. How that looks is we can work through that between the consultants and staff. We can work through that piece as to what that looked like. The discussion during the budget was, as Russ mentioned, was so we wanted to put a placeholder in the budget. We know the council has been working on this for over a year. There's interest in doing it. There's capacity issues that it creates with the street fund. So, there's offsets. The benefit through the stormwater utility affects the street fund, affects the sidewalks. The council talked a lot about its sidewalk program. Right. This is directly related to that program. So anyway, I don't want to get too caught up in that, but the schedule moving forward is in October is the idea of, okay, that's at the end of the first quarter, going into the second quarter, staff talked about that would be ideal, looking to implement the utility fee schedule at that point with a January 1st kind of kickoff with potentially hiring somebody and implementing the program. So in order to kind of go along that timeline, we needed to, that's why this is on now, so we can get the feedback. If there's more work to be done by staff to, make the council more comfortable with the moving forward with the utility, then we want to do that. If, August, is coming up, and yes, we want to, here's what I want to know is, are you willing to, is the council interested, I'm not willing, but interested in moving forward with the utility? And the utility, the level of service, we can talk about that. Is it going to be $16? Is it going to be $20? Is it going to be $10? That's just going to identify the level of service. It may not be optimal, but that's what we're trying to get. at this point, set aside August in terms of looking at August as an ordinance, because the intent is not to put pressure on the council to decide, you know, you're going to have to do an ordinance come August. We're trying to get this feedback and develop the schedule. But if, you know, everyone will be hesitant to move forward if, you know, 6 council members say, I'm not willing to move forward, or the conditions of it are, there's conditions attached to that we need to complete before that decision is made. So simply put, that's all we're looking for. That's what I'm looking for. Now, the consultants and Russ, I'm sure will tell you something different, but the timeline is whether it's 3 months ago or 3 months from now, we can work with all of that. It's, but is there a desire to move forward with the stormwater utility?
Laurel?
How do you get people to show up to tell you what they think about this? This is a particularly difficult time. I'm one of those people that has a sign that says "Stay home, save lives" in my front yard. And it used to be said when I was teaching that for university faculty members, if you wanted to come to a faculty senate meeting, you need to talk about one of 2 things: raises or parking. And I think if you want to get the attention of ratepayers here, the best way to do that is to show them how much the rates are going to go up. And I don't know if this would be possible with Janet and her technology management or technology magic, but whether it would be possible to send out a trial balloon utility bill to say, if we go forward with this new utility, this is how much your utility bill will be, how much more it will be this month. If we go with the jalopy, it'll be this amount. If we go with the Chevrolet, it'll be this amount. If we go with a Cadillac, your utility bill this month will be this much. And if you want to talk to us about that, provide a link for people in their utility bill to tell us what they think about that. I don't know how feasible that would be, but I know in the mayor's notes, Mayor Kuntz, you could write something about be sure to check your utility bill this month because there's important information for you to know. And also a little bit of practical information here, practical concerns in dealing with politics. If the first increase in rates is in October, don't forget that the election is coming up about 5 weeks after that. And ratepayers tend to be pretty unhappy about increases in rates when they go to the polls.
I think what Chad just said, we probably wouldn't get all the infrastructure ready until January, but thank you. You're absolutely right. Although let that happen as it may. Yeah, thank you, Laura.
Well, keeping in mind, ratepayers do have long memories.
Yes, they do. I think the issue about the utility bill, obviously including information in our utility bill, is always a good way to get stuff out. But on the bill itself, I'm not sure we'd have the opportunity to educate folks. Because once again, this is a new thing rather than just saying, hey, we want to charge you this amount. What do you think? It is back to the piece I think Roxanne was talking about. How do we add the education? But yeah, I think, Laurel, you're right. If we want to go forward with that and try to put together an educational piece, we had public relations consultants working on this. They probably got lots of good material, figuring out how to distill it, send it out. And if you require feedback, that's fine. But I think just if that's something we want to do, are people uncomfortable with the idea of the utility at all? Maybe we need to do that. We've talked about this for a year. We've gone forward. We've invested. If we don't want to go any further on this, now's the time to say that, or at least say, yes, we'll move forward. Byron.
And you beat me to what I was just about to say was we either think this is a good idea or we don't. And, if we have the appetite to pursue this, then let's give some clear direction on this tonight so we can move forward the public education, all that kind of stuff will happen afterwards. It's going to take some courage to make a decision that may or may not be popular with the ratepayers, but it seems like other than rates increasing, I'm not sure that there are any other downsides to doing this. I see a lot of upside to doing it. So I, for one, advocate proceeding as per our plan and the direction that we've gotten from staff thus far.
And Doug.
I just want to jump in to clarify a couple things. I just want to make sure everyone has all the information. I want to make sure everyone understands the number of off ramps that still exist between here and the finish line. For example, you could give direction tonight to put together an ordinance establishing the utility. That ordinance would then have to be debated, and you could receive feedback on that ordinance. And so there's a whole process just around the ordinance. Now, that ordinance won't necessarily have any dollar figures in it. A very common provision of that kind of ordinance is to say rates for the stormwater utility shall be set by resolution of the city council. There's not going to be any rates in there. And so it just establishes the legal authority to have the utility in the first place. So you could then pass that. You could enact that ordinance, if I'm using the right terminology, and you still don't have a rate yet. So now you come back with a rate resolution, and that gets debated. And so all I want to do is just let you know that there are a number of off ramps here, even if you decided to move forward tonight.
Thank you very much for that great summary of that process. John Kerry.
Yeah, thanks, Doug. That was a good synopsis of how we might move on this. You know, I think if we look at this in the big picture, one of the things that we have a difficult time funding is, because of the revenue stream that's diminishing, is our street fund. And it's difficult to get any more gas tax. It's difficult to get a bigger slice. There's a lot of difficulties with that. If we want to improve our streets and our transportation system in all forms, then we need to think about ways to offload some of the expenses. This is the ideal way for that. So I personally, I'm all for it. I think we do what we can do to get information out. I think if we're going to move forward on this thing, rather than buried in a link under the Public Works, we need to consolidate some things and get it on the front of the front page of the city website under news. And then it's easy to direct people there. But finally, and again, this is the kind of thing that I gripe about all the time is, what we really know that is new, if I have it right, since we had the February meeting at UCBC, is the result of that. We know nothing else that's new, and it was we moved forward on all of this with the proviso that, well, there'll be more information. We'll have, in the budget process, we'll have more discussion about it when we get, after, but we got to pass this right now. And we did, and thank goodness we did. Wise move. But, I'm a slow processor. I get that. But, I think we need to go back and review this information. And I'm going to vote for, most likely, whatever we come up with. I want to be able to explain to people why I did. If somebody said, well, how come you went for the window door number 2 as opposed to door number 1, I couldn't tell them right now, as we speak right now. And Doug, setting a rate tonight. But that will come at a later time. We've got time to consolidate the information that I need, at least, and to be able to defend whatever, and if Byron says it's a courageous vote, it might be, and Laurel same way. And I'm happy to do that if I have the data in one place that I can, that I can look at and come down on. So Doug made my life easier.
Roxanne?
So to make an analogy and see if I understand this, we've kind of gone from the first date to the second date to the third date to meeting each other's families to moving in together. The next step would be engagement and then a wedding. And so that kind of finalizes it. But all you're asking us to do today really is say, yeah, let's go to the next step. Is that what I'm hearing?
Let's marry ourselves to a stormwater utility. We still have plenty of time to get away from it all. We haven't ordered the damn cake. We're not getting in the dress.
Right. Let's make sure our families blend well. Let's make sure everybody understands what the household's going to look like. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
I think Councilor Lopez can relate to this, right?
I have a little bit of experience, recent experience in this venue, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, so I am now looking for consensus to move forward on an ordinance to form a stormwater utility. I'm looking for a consensus to move forward on that.
How would you like that? Thumbs up?
I'm seeing 6 thumbs up. 5 thumbs up. Sorry, I'm not up there, am I? So one of you, I see consensus to move forward.
You didn't see my thumb up.
I did not. Thank you. I noted.
You'll get my thumb up if somebody can tell me that some of that money that we save from the street fund will go to sidewalks.
I'll be able to tell you that.
Anybody?
I can.
He just did.
I will be able to show you that.
Mr. Cooper also. That is why we are doing this, to put more money into
Scouts Honor,
general fund money into streets, sidewalks, and transportation.
That's Rotary all your Scouts Honor there?
Rotary Honor.
Please?
It was Rotary Honor. Lane.
Yeah, this is a question for Doug and John. The structure of a credit, does that go in your enacting ordinance, or do you put that in the resolution? My question is, do they need to give you guidance tonight on the question of a credit in crafting the ordinance?
Yeah, thank you. We would typically put that in the ordinance. So, and so that would be ideal to know if you're interested in offering a credit when customers provide qualifying on-site mitigation, and then we'll write that in, or we could give you an ordinance with and without if you don't want to direct us tonight. But if there's general consensus that you want to be able to offer credits for qualifying customers, we'll write that into the ordinance.
So again, we could engage ourselves to the idea of developing credits, but we wouldn't name them until as we were preparing for the wedding, I believe is what I heard. So consensus about that, Roxanne?
I just wanted to make sure then, when we talked about the dollar amounts in the budget, though, we never talked about a credit. So we would have to look at what that would mean, dollars and cents. Is that correct?
So what it will mean is the rates for each of the levels of service that we've already presented would change slightly so that we could offer what will basically be a 40% rate credit for qualifying customers. We know there'll be very few, so the rate will have to go up just a little bit to cover that lost revenue. So that's what we would write. That's what we would write in.
And in very, very initial draft calculations, we estimated that amount to be around 50 cents per month for basically everybody else's bill. So that number is not official, but that gives you a sense of John means it's small. It is small.
The rate would change. Yeah.
Perfect.
You know,
right.
my thought on that, sorry, Cease, but
Go ahead, John.
my thought on it is there's not going to be a hell of a lot of financial benefit, but if we want to encourage good behavior or sort of modern thinking behavior, then there's some value to doing that. Now, whether or not it gets to the point of being, you know, not cost effective, and I'm really not even worried about cost effective, but just stupid to do because we don't get enough out of it, then fine. But it's a way to make a statement that if you're going to develop your property, and here's a way, whether it's permeable pavers or whatever else, that is kind of perceived as being forward thinking, then we ought to recognize that. That's really, it's less about the finance, more about the message.
I would now like to ask for consensus on including the concept of potential rate credits in the ordinance that we are considering. And now I see Darren. I'm not seeing you, buddy. No, I always have one abstention. It's Darren Silvernagel. He doesn't even want to give credits to our largest utility customer. No, I appreciate that, Darren. So the idea, gentlemen, I see going forward is to bring back an ordinance to the council, forming a stormwater utility with the concept of rate credits for mitigation for commercial customers only, if we need to be that specific. And we will certainly publicize our next meeting where that is available to us, so we can invite people to listen to our robust discussion.
Yes. So one thing I was thinking that we can add to that when the ordinance, the draft comes back, is also a ratepayer outreach strategy, you know, a way to do the best we can. John mentioned the website, Facebook, press release, talk to the IO to get articles in the paper, you know, start to really kind of push it out there to the public, and so that they know, people know we're looking at this to try to, you may get 50 people at your next meeting virtual, but that's okay. You want to make every effort you can so that a year from now, when people complain that you did this in secret, you can pull all of this out of your bag and show them that we did everything we could to get the message out to the public. Yeah, so I'll put something together for that as well.
All right. Thanks for hanging in there with us, Doug and John, for that.
Oh, thank
This
you.
is how we roll in Monmouth. So
Thank you very much. Have a good night. Thanks for the reminder on the credits, Lane.
yeah, thank you, Russ, very much. Appreciate all your work on this as well. So, and with that, John, I hope you're going to move to adjourn.
I would like to just remind, I guess, that, anybody that we need to have a final report on this before we make final decisions on this. And I'm hoping that will be in a consolidated format.
I heard that for one. So did Doug.
So a full report, not just the PowerPoint version, but all of the information they've developed to get us here.
Yes, we will certainly be doing that, but we're gonna be focused on getting that ordinance together for August.
Great. Yeah,
we'll try
we
to
should
do
focus
both.
on that.
Yeah.
Next step. The backup information, John, would then be the decision about rate, level of service, et cetera. So they will give us all of that to be able to do that level of service conversation coming up. I see no other comments. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you very much. We shall call it 9:17 by this clock, whoever won that in the pool.
No, it's 9:14.
It's
It's
9:14.
9:14.
Makes a difference.
It does. I won.
Chad won. Thanks, guys, very much. See y'all.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Tell people to wear masks and wash their damn hands.
Yeah, no. There you go. I
I
said,
was the optimist.
you were way
At
optimistic.
8:50.
I told them it was
No, I
it was
looked at it.
unpredictable.